Imlac Video Productions presents The Author's Outlet, featuring book signings and other appearances by authors in the Concord, Massachusetts area. This show features children's author Rebecca Bond promoting her new book, This Place in the Snow. Rebecca will be introduced by Lorraine Hollick Martin from the Concord Bookshop.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome to the Concord Bookshop, and we're pleased to have Rebecca Bond with us today. Just a couple of things to mention to you first of all. If you want a signed copy, just pick them up from here and Rebecca will be happy to sign them for you. And we do have some flyers. We have some more events coming up. I think we might be out of flyers for the moment, but keep your eyes posted for that. So just a brief introduction about Rebecca. Rebecca graduated from Brown University and also studied illustration at the Rhode Island School of Design. A native of Vermont, she now lives in New York City. We are delighted to host this upcoming, now present event with Rebecca Bond, which introduces her newly released This Place in the Snow. In this exquisite tale, the snow falls during the night, blanketing a town in white. Together, a group of children shape and carve a mountain of snow into a kingdom of their own. Rebecca is also the author and illustrator of several popular and beautiful picture books such as Bravo Maurice, Just Like a Baby, and When Marcus Moore Moved In. Well, with that, over to Rebecca. Welcome, and thank you. Over to you.
Well, nice to see you all. It's fun to have people to look at while I talk about my book. What I thought I would do is tell you a little bit about how this book came to be. And I think I should say that for me, I grew up in a little town with a lot of snow. It snowed and snowed and snowed more than most places. And so I got to play in the snow a lot when I was growing up. And for me, I think my favorite things I did when I was a kid was building forts. And we built forts of all different kinds. My sister and myself built forts with two of our friends especially. And in the summer we built forts out of, one kind of fort I remember was we took fence posts and we stacked them up, 2 fence posts and then 2 more and 2 more and 2 more. So you had what looked like a Lincoln log cabin. And then you think, well, how do you get into a cabin like that? You leave a space at the top and you climb up over the top and go in. So we built these kind of forts, and we built forts in trees. We had a tree fort that we spent the nights in at my friend's house. And my favorite forts were the winter forts, because these friends of mine had a swamp in their backwoods. And in the winter, when it froze, some years you got a really smooth piece of ice. And there were these cattails growing up out of it, and all these reeds growing up out of it. And we would go up to the swamp, my sister and my friends and myself, with brooms and with shovels, and we'd tie scarves around our knees so that we could kneel on the ice and we could clear it off. And we'd clear out these big pockets. So we had little rooms. We'd have a room for the kitchen and a room for the storage area and a room for the dance hall, and we made this kingdom out of the swamp, and it was just so much fun that I've always thought that is something that I should write a story about. And so that's how this story came about. And the last thing I should say probably about where this story came from is that because I grew up in a little town, and there was a school that I went to that was just a little ways down the road, that I walked to school. And all the people who walked to school in my village met at the town library. And there were about 10 of us. And so we would meet every morning on school mornings at the town library. And in the winter when it snowed, the snow plow pushed all the snow to the village library. Or it seemed like all the snow was pushed to the village library. So there was a huge mound of snow by the village library, which we always climbed on and slid down and tunneled inside. And that's really what this book is about, is that big snow mound and everything you can do inside it. And what I thought I would show you, since you get to see the finished book here, but I think it's more fun maybe to look at a little bit of the pieces of the book and how it started out, so you can see that it doesn't just end. I don't start with this. And so what I brought you is, I brought you my notebook. And it's a little hard to see because it's in pencil and it's not very dark. But I think if you look really carefully, you'll recognize some of the pages in my notebook. This is a little house. It's hard to see from where you are, but on the hill and the tree. And this, I'll show you this. Have you ever heard of tracing paper? This is called tracing paper. And if you put it on top of your drawing, you can see through it to what's underneath. So I did that. I was trying to figure out if I wanted to put telephone poles into this first scene in the book. And then I decided I didn't want any telephone poles, so I took it off. But it gives you an idea. And then I'll show you little bits of it. I was trying to figure out the trees. I knew that I was going to have, it's pretty hard to see from where you are, but I wanted to show the trees getting the first snowfall and falling on the roof, the first snowfalls. And then I wanted to show the children waking up to the first snowfall. So I drew all sorts of children in their bedrooms, all waking up in the morning saying, "The snow has come, the plow, I hear the plow." And then they all rush to get dressed because they want to go outside. And because I drew on this tracing paper, you can move it around. You can decide, oh, I think I'll move her somewhere else. But these were all different children, I thought, who would be waking up to the plow. And then, of course, they have to have breakfast. So I had them all eating breakfast in a hurry. And then they step outside to the plow. And the plow is pushing up all the snow in front of their houses and building this big mound of snow. And then they climb up it. I don't always draw in order. I happen to be kind of drawing in order in this book. Then they climb on top of the mountain and they decide what they're going to make out of it. And then the rest of this, it's all out of order. This is actually the end of the book when they come back inside at the end of the day. And I have to tell you, the very hardest part of this book was the drawing of the Snow Kingdom itself. I just couldn't get it right. I think because in my head, I had something in mind and it was really hard to draw it. So I drew all different kinds of snow kingdoms. And I drew all different kinds of kids tunneling in the snow. And of course I didn't use all these sketches in the finished book. But this is an idea I had of them digging like a trench, a snow trench altogether. I didn't end up using this in the book either, but there was one of the snow kingdoms that I was playing around with. This is them building a snowman. And I tried showing it in different ways. So I just did lots and lots of sketches, but these are photocopies. I made a copy of my sketches so I could move them around. It's kind of like, building a house. And that's about it for this sketchbook. I had a lot more sketches than this, but I just thought I'd show you the first ones. And then what I did is I put them all together into what's called a book dummy, so that I could really see exactly what was going to be on every page. And this starts out just as an introduction to the book. And then there's a second page, and what I wanted to show was almost as if you're going down this road, and the more you go down the road, you get into the village, kind of like a little movie. You're getting closer and closer to the village where the story takes place. And then, this is really the first page of the book, but it says, "A silent snow fell all night long." And this is the sentence that I said to myself over and over and over again when I was writing this book. I just kept hearing, "A silent snow fell all night long. A silent snow fell all night long." And I heard it, and I had to figure out what was going to happen. This was before I had drawn any pictures. I had this sentence in my head. And then I said, well, when the snow falls, the next thing that happens is it lay like lace along the trees. You know how in the winter the trees have this little coating of snow and it looks like lace, or like a design. So it lay like lace along the trees. It hatted the houses. It capsuled the cars. You know how your cars look like they're turned into a capsule with snow? In thick and sticky white. I just thought that's what happens when it snows. And then of course the plow comes and wakes everyone up. So you see the plow coming up the hill, past all the windows of the sleeping houses, and you know that there are kids in there asleep and they're going to wake up with that noise of the plow because they've seen the plow before. And then the kids all wake up, and this is sort of exactly taken out of my notebook. And I'll show you some little things I do to sort of play around. Is that when I was drawing this, I had, see these two boys here in bunk beds? They were too close to this part of the book, which is called the gutter. And so I had to move them into the book more because they would just get lost in the fold. And so I copied it and I moved it over and I made their bunk bed especially tall and skinny to fit it on the page. Then I go back to them getting dressed and having breakfast. Now this is a change too from my first sketch, which is underneath, or one of my first sketches. Shows them on this page. See how they're all over the page? But we decided, the person who's helping me work on this book, a friend of mine, thought it'd be nicer if they went from all getting dressed separately to a couple tables that they're eating around together. And then this. And then them racing up the hill. And actually, I think I have underneath another one of this. Can you see the difference? In this one, I think the plow is smaller here. I want it to be farther away. And then there's some little things you'd notice if you look really carefully that, see this girl racing up the hill? She doesn't really look like she's racing up the hill the way you would if you were racing up a snow hill. It's hard to race up a snow hill. It takes more work than running down the pavement. And someone said that to me. She doesn't look like she's running up a snow hill. So I tried to change her so she really looked like she was working up all that thick snow. So there's lots and lots of changes in the book. And then they end up on top, and this is a change too. It was a lot smaller before, and I enlarged it because I wanted to be really close up. They're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And then they start building, tunneling. But this dummy is called a book dummy. It's not really the real thing, but it's like a real thing. They call it book dummy. But this gives you an idea of what I do before I start working on the paintings, just so I can figure out what's going to happen on every page. And once I've done this, I send this off to my friend who works in the publishing houses. She's an editor, but she's really a friend of mine. And she looks at this all very carefully, and she tells me the things that she thinks that I should change, or that she thinks could be made better. And she made some suggestions. She said, I think you should add a page in here and show more of the snow palace before they build it, before we see it, the book, people reading the book. So we added a page in. We did lots of little changes. This is a change. My last page of the book showed the kingdom up close. And if you look at the book itself, you'll notice that the kingdom is really little on the last page. We decided it was nicer if it was far away, like we're up in the sky. So with that, maybe I'll read it to you. So you can hear the book. I don't know if you read it or not, but this way you get to see some of the things that I just showed you. And if you're, another kind of interesting thing about how this happened is the cover, you'll notice it looks almost exactly like a page inside the book, but not exactly. And it's because what they asked me to do is to take the page inside the book, and they wanted it for the cover, but they wanted to have the kids a little more active, like they're jumping up and down. So I have a couple kids are different from the inside of the book, which you'll notice if you look at it. So I think you'll recognize a lot of this from my notebook, but now it's in color. So this is supposed to be the road leading into the village. here's that sentence that I kept saying to myself. A silent snow fell all night long. It lay like lace along the trees. It hatted the houses, capsuled the cars in thick and sticky white. A lumbering plow came rumbling, rattling, pushing up hillsides, up mountains, up snow, rolling and rounding it, mounding it high in creamy waves of white. Now rooms asleep at once awakened, and quiet turned noisy, and noisy turned loud, with strings of cries and shrieks and shouts. The plow, the plow, the plow. And now came the flurry of dressing in woolens, and there was the hurry of eating hot cakes. And there was the hush as they stepped outside to watch the work of the plow. At last with a wave their snow mound was ready. Like springs being sprung, they raced to the top, and they looked down around them at what this might be, this place they would make in the snow. And then came much talking and planning about it. Like this, someone said, or maybe like that. And could we? And we could, and let's do that. They greatly agreed. So now they began. They tunneled, they hollowed. They tunneled deep pockets. They hollowed large holes. They shoveled great shovels, big spoonfuls of white, sun snow like lemon, shade snow light blue. Then using their arms, they built up snow wallways, and using their feet, they trampled snow floors, and using their might, they rolled and they rounded, they mounded snow spirals sky high. And after they finished their shaping and carving, and shined things all shiny, and carefully swept, together they felt it, just them, and all this. They were kings in a kingdom uncovered. And though much later they went inside and took off wet snowsuits and sat with hot soup, that gauzy white night they came out again to the sound in the town of the plow. And they looked up there to the sky just above them, and they looked down here to the ground just below. And they looked all around them at what they could see. This place full of grace in the snow. So I made it very little at the end instead of close up the way you saw it in my sketches. And another little interesting thing, just to show you since I have it here, is for the first time I did a cover that wraps all the way around. So you can make it one picture wrap. So it's a picture on the front and the back and on the side, which was fun to do. So there you have it, a little bitty introduction to how a book comes together.
You know, one thing that our family has the privilege of living next door in Vermont to Rebecca. And one thing I can attest to is the amount of work. I mean, I've seen you work on this, not this book, but on your others.
Yeah.
And it's hard work. I can see just looking at you. I mean, it goes on for months and months.
No, it's crazy.
How long did it take you to write the book, start to finish?
To write it or to write and illustrate it?
The whole thing.
The whole thing took me about 9 months. Yeah. So, but this one wrote itself quickly. A lot of them don't. So.
One thing I liked about it was that one of the houses there really looks just like your house.
Yeah, I know it's true. I probably in my head it is my house.
Are the illustrations yours also, or?
Yeah.
I have a couple questions. First of all, I think it's such a poetic book. It's like a beautiful poem. Do you write poetry or any other kind of writing other than for children's books on?
No, but I love reading poetry. So, and I like reading books that are poetically written prose books. So I think it just sort of, it sinks into you.
I know you're an artist. but your writing is so beautiful too. It really is. And the other question I had, I forget what your medium is for your paintings.
It's acrylics. Acrylics is, the fun thing about acrylics is you can paint right over your own paintings. So if you wanted to, which I do a lot in these books, is I'll just change my mind. Like I'll decide that I want to move this dog from here and put him over here. So I'll paint him out and you won't see him at all. And I'll put him over here and you'll never know that he was sitting here, but I know. So there's a lot of changes in these books. Underneath the paintings are lots of change. This guy down here was added in at the very end because if you count them up, there are 12 kids in the books, in this book, and I only showed 11 on this page. And they said, well, where's number 12? So I went back and I added him in at the very bottom. So I thought he was already off to breakfast. That was my idea. He was already at the breakfast table, but they said, you have to show all 12. And they also wanted me to put a few more pieces of clothes on the floor. They said it was too neat. So I added some clothes.
Do you recommend acrylics for people who are just starting?
In a way, I do, because it's. I mean, I think it's a hard medium, but I think it's easier than watercolor. I think watercolor is really difficult because if you make a mistake, you're committed to it. You've made your mistake, you know. But I mean, you can do beautiful things with watercolor you can never do with acrylics. So it's sort of apples and oranges. But you can paint with this very watery. You can paint with it like watercolor. The skies, a lot of the skies are painted like watercolor, and I couldn't fix those if I chose, unless I painted out the whole thing. So I like it because it allows you to make corrections and paint transparently if you choose to, or paint opaquely if you choose to, and it dries quickly.
So you can thin acrylic.
Yeah, with water, just like watercolor. You can use it like watercolor. It's water-based paint, strangely, even though it's plastic. Strange medium.
So Rebecca, it says that you grew up in the Northeast Kingdom region of Vermont and you live there now? Did you
Well,
move back?
no, I don't live there now, but I try to spend time there. So I actually live outside of Boston.
Oh, okay.
So, but I did live in New York City. So yeah, I know it's hard to track me because I'm always moving around. So, there you have it.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you very much. That was nice.
Thank you.